فاختلط به نبات الأرض فأصبح هشيما تذروه الرياح وكان الله على كل شيء مقتدرا. المال والبنون زينة الحياة الدنيا والباقيات الصالحات خير عند ربك ثوابا وخير أملا. المال والبنون زينة الحياة الدنيا والباقيات الصالحات خير عند ربك ثوابا وخير أملا. ويوم نسير الجبال وترى الأرض بارزة وحشرناهم فلم نغادر منهم أحدا وعرضوا على ربك صفا لقد جئتمونا كما خلقناكم أول مرة بل زعمتم أن لن نجعل لكم موعدا. ووضع الكتاب فترى المجرمين مشفقين مما فيه ويقولون يا ويلتنا ما لهذا الكتاب لا يغادر صغيرة ولا كبيرة إلا أحصاها ووجدوا ما عملوا حاضرا ولا يظلم ربك أحدا. وإذ قلنا للملائكة اسجدوا لآدم فسجدوا إلا إبليس وإذ قلنا للملائكة اسجدوا لآدم فسجدوا إلا إبليس كان من الجن ففسق عن أمر ربه أفتتخذونه وذريته أولياء من دوني وهم لكم عدو بئس للظالمين بدلا. ما أشهدتهم خلق السماوات والأرض ولا خلق أنفسهم وما كنت متخذ المضلين عضدا. ويوم يقول نادوا شركائي الذين زعمتم فدعوهم فلم يستجيبوا لهم وجعلنا بينهم موبقا. ورأى المجرمون النار فظنوا أنهم مواقعوها ولم يجدوا عنها مصرفا. ولقد صرفنا في هذا القرآن للناس من كل مثل وكان الإنسان أكثر شيء جدلا. وما منع الناس أن يؤمنوا إذ جاءهم الهدى ويستغفروا ربهم إلا أن تأتيهم سنة الأولين أو يأتيهم العذاب قبلا وما نرسل المرسلين إلا مبشرين ومنذرين ويجادل الذين كفروا بالباطل ليدحضوا به الحق واتخذوا آياتي وما أنذروا هزوا ومن أظلم ممن ذكر بآيات ربه فأعرض عنها ونسي ما قدمت يداه إنا جعلنا على قلوبهم أكنة أن يفقهوه وفي آذانهم وقرا وإن تدعهم إلى الهدى فلن يهتدوا إذن أبدا وربك الغفور ذو الرحمة لو يؤاخذهم بما كسبوا لعجل لهم العذاب بل لهم موعد لن يجدوا من دونه موئلا وتلك القرى أهلكناهم لما ظلموا وجعلنا لمهلكهم موعدا صدق الله العظيم. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله دائما الحق نصدق لا إله إلا الله نظهر بها الدعوة
إن الحمد لله ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهدي الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله ونصلي ونسلم عليه وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين وعلى أصحابه بجهدهم وتضحيتهم قام هذا الدين فرضي الله عنهم أجمعين. In this khutbah, we wanted to focus and bring together two reflections that we have going on in the masjid. One mostly is being done by Sheikh Musa after Fajr, and then the other one is being done around Asr time, and now it should continue over a few sessions with regard to Ayatul Kursi. Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala in Ayatul Kursi gives us one of the deepest lessons on knowledge overall. Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala says, Allahu la ilaha illa hu. This is an important teaching that Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala is saying that there's no God other than Allah. But literally translated, that there's no God in existence except Allah, and then included in that you can say that there's no one worthy of worship except Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. What we began to see in the Muslim world is that there was a lot of focus placed on the worship of Allah because there were some issues in ibadah, some issues in worship, which people began to look at other things and worship things that's in the worst case scenario, or they began to have misunderstanding. Even in the Muslim community, it's possible that we deviate from Tawheed. And we argue about this, that the Ummah Muhammad will never deviate in Tawheed and so on and so forth. But it's possible to deviate away from Tawheed based on two things. One, ignorance of who Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala is, yani al-jahil. And two, by following our desires. And then comes, you can even add the third category, what begins to happen when we follow our desires, and what is the impact on our belief, and what is the impact on our desires when our belief is not correct. Let's clarify that. Someone can believe that this particular thing is going to give them support and help, and they rely upon it. They rely upon it in a way that they don't rely upon Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. And so they make that thing more powerful in their lives than the power of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. Another person can be so obsessed with their sin, with their desire, their love of money, whatever may be in that direction and desire, and it begins to cloud the way that they think. It begins to destroy their understanding of Tawheed. And we see that in the example of Fir'aun. We see that in the example of Qarun. We see that in the example of Kufr. In today's time, when Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala is saying that there is no God except Him, is to say whether you believe or don't believe, whether the kuffar say they don't believe and they will continue not to believe, that Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala will continue to exist, and on the day Yawm al-Qiyamah, that will be worked out for a lot of people. Now for those who, they're on the fence, for those that are not sure, the question is now, do we take benefit from prophethood itself? Do we take benefit from thinking solidly so that we come to some sort of understanding of who Allah is? If you go to Bergenline, like about half a block up or something like that, there's a store, it has a whole bunch of idols in it. It's just a magic store. I'm not saying like tricks magic, I'm saying like kufr magic. So it's not an issue for you to go and see if there's magic tricks. No, it's the issue of saying that it's a place that supports openly the reality of kufr. Idols. These are like the type of idols that were there in the time of Quraysh. So when Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala is saying, Huwa al-Hayyul Qayyum, Quraysh, they understood what this meant. That means that this doesn't have life to it. So why would we take something like this, we carve it into some figure and we put it on an altar, or we put it in the Kaaba and we worship it? And it's the same thing, even with the reality. And I remember when I was a youth, and I used to work in a department store actually in South Jersey. And the guy told me, he said, you know what, I don't believe in religion, but what I believe is in money. Because money is what moves the world. Does money have life? Can money stand on its own? Al-Hayyul Qayyum. To say that Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala is living and stands on His own means that Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala doesn't need anything. We need food. We need rest. The world needs. Nothing in the world can stand by itself. You got to think about that for a minute. Because it's not just the issue of saying La ilaha illallah. It's the issue of reflecting deeply. Why is it that we believe in Tawheed? Why is it that we're Muslim? Because if we don't have that clearly, then we're going to run into a problem. لا تأخذه سنة ولا نوم. Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala is not impacted by tiredness or by sleep. Not falling asleep in Jum'ah. As an example. This is a refutation of those who say that Isa ibn Maryam is Ilah, is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How can a human being that gets tired, how can a human being that needs to sleep, how can a human being that dies be God? For us as Muslims, that may be clear and simple. But for others, it's not clear and simple. Even in 2022, in the 21st century, we still have people that believe that stones, they still believe that the sun, they still believe that human beings are God. Musa alayhi salatu was salam, he had a long journey with Bani Israel. Difficult journey. And it's mentioned in the Quran on a regular basis. Why? Because Bani Israel تعودوا على الكفر. Bani Israel تعودوا على الكفر. They got used to disbelief. والطغيان. They lived under Pharaoh for so long, they didn't really know what it meant to be free. And there's two things that we have to get here. يعني في ظل الفساد السياسي الناس يتأثرون بلا شك في عقيدتهم وسلوكهم. يعني when there's oppression on the earth, political oppression, the people are impacted by that. And the way it is that they deal with issues. And the way it is that they think about things. Look how many we can say they believe يعني يعتقدون باليقين أن الطريق للوصول إلى الحق هو الرشوة. Because that's what they got used to in the environment. That the way to get there right is by bribery. And even though we have La ilaha illallah, and even though we have the Quran, and even though the Quran talks about al-fasad al-mali, economic corruption, and even though the Quran talks about the rights of the people, at the end of the day, the environment يفرض علينا بعض الأحوال، وهذه الأحوال تغير السلوك والعقيدة. There's certain conditions of life that they have an impact on us. And they have an impact on us and what we believe as Muslims and how it is that we act. This is the importance of da'wah. And when we talk about da'wah, we're not talking about the issue of just going in the street and talking to people about Islam. The importance about da'wah is that the Muslim always understands that the knowledge of the deen is at the center. But the knowledge of the deen has to be correct. It can't just be any knowledge. It can't be a knowledge that's not going to build us as an ummah. It has to build us as an ummah. Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, he tried to build an ummah out of Bani Israel. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he took from Quraysh those who were willing and he built an ummah out of them. Don't ever think that we're not in the process of building an ummah. If this was just an affair, the issue of iman, of only just believing in your heart and that's it, it would have been sufficient. For one person just to purify their hearts, focus on their lives, and that's it. Part of our struggle is not understanding that as Muslims, we're always in that reality that there's something that's called an ummah. Once we forget that reality of what's called an ummah, then everybody's on their own. There's an ummah. Part of our ummah is in Philistine suffering. There's an ummah. Part of our ummah in India suffering. There's an ummah. There's an ummah that's refugees all over Europe. There's an ummah that when we needed them to get immigration passes, they didn't get it, but now we see it coming for Ukraine. There's an ummah. There's an ummah that was expelled in 1948 and they ended up all over Latin America. And on the story continues. There's an ummah. His youth are being murdered in Iraq. His blood is being shed in the streets. There's an ummah. We find his youth are struggling and suffering. But that ummah continues to exist. That ummah continues to say La ilaha illallah. But once we remove this concept of ummah from our hearts, then we missed a lot of what we need to understand. Because if you have the concept of ummah in your heart, يعني يتحمل كل واحد يبدأ أن يتحمل المسؤولية. لكن حينما ينفصل القلب أو تنفصل القلب من فكرة الأمة، كل واحد يمشي كهو يشاء على وحده طالبا لمصالحته فقط. It's easy to dismiss what's going on to the Muslims. It's easy to just focus on yourself. It's easy to just think about yourself. When you separate from the concept of ummah, then you'll be in that state. That is all about you and that's it. Until the time when you need us. When you need us to bury you. When you need us to work with your children. When you need us to look for a job. When you need us for an apartment. When you need us to marry. The identity of the Muslim is tied into that reality. So the first thing is we understand who Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala is. And we understand that the struggle of the Anbiya was just that, to take us from different communities, to take us from different tribes and nations, and build us into an ummah. It's fine. Some people, they complain, they say, for instance, in Salat al-Tarawih, they say that people are only making dua for the Arab world, this, that. No, it's not that reality. It's that each tribe is so occupied with itself, of what it needs. It's not necessarily that you're being forgotten. It's that each tribe has to organize itself. It's that each tribe has to know its place. And then we can cooperate. نَتَعَوَّنَ لِلْبِرِّ وَالتَّقْوَى. We can cooperate, but we have to have that concept of ummah. Musa tried to form that in his people. And one of the things that Musa was forced back to was dealing with the problem that when he went to speak to Allah on behalf of his people, and he took some of them that were committed to him, and he mentioned, وَعَجِدْتُ إِلَيْكَ رَبِّكَ لِتَرْضَى. That's the ayat that we've been dealing with. I've rushed to you, Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, to your promise. I rushed to implement your deen, so that you will be pleased. And in this midst of what? In this circle, this environment, Musa was trying to deal with the condition of his people under Pharaoh. And what did his people do? They turned their backs on Tawheed. In the midst of Musa talking to Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. In the midst of the struggle. In the midst of the oppression. And part of that was because of his Samiri. And this is what we want to focus on. Harun by himself was not sufficient. As Samiri was in that environment, and he encouraged that amongst the believers. He encouraged shirk amongst the believers. And now this created a whole new different reality amongst Bani Israel. What I'm saying is this, that in the midst of our struggles, we can't give up hope. And in the midst of our struggles, we have to have clear who Allah is and what is our relationship with Allah. Because you're not going to depend on this, on the material. You're not going to depend on human beings and get what it is that you need. We have to depend upon Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. We have to realize that this dunya is only for a short period of time. We have to realize that the power is with Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. That has to be clear with us. We have to realize the power of dua. We have to realize the power of seeking from Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. Our dua may not be accepted right away, but our dua is heard. Don't we say that Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala huwa al-alim? Sometimes we love something and it's not good for us, like the Quran says. And sometimes we hate something and it's good for us. The reality of the da'wah is clarifying that. Where we need to go. Where we need to go. The reality of the da'wah is clarifying that we need to build our community. We keep saying this. You have to put that in your mind. Every day you have to put in your mind a portion of my time, a portion of my wealth. My commitment is not only to myself and my family and my tribe. My commitment is also to the masjid. My commitment is also to the community. What is it that I can do? It doesn't have to be a lot, but a portion of your time. And I'm not even saying here wealth, but a portion of your time to be concerned with the affairs of the Muslims. And the other issue is this, that just like Al-Samiri was able to be in that environment with Musa and Harun and create doubt, we have to realize that there's no way that we're going to move if we're not dealing with the knowledge of Islam. Because we'll have doubts in the deen. They began to have the greatest doubt. Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala sent them a prophet that was in their midst. And even with all of that, while he was talking to Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, they committed shirk. They rebelled against him. They fought against him. That was the reality of Bani Israel. Can the Muslims continue to fight each other? Can the Muslims continue to be disorganized? Can the Muslims continue to be in ignorance of the deen and think we're going to survive? Do we think that we will survive under those conditions? It is what it is. We've been expelled out of the lands of Tawheed. Now you have a responsibility. Now you're on your journey, just like Bani Israel was on his journey. Now the true test comes. will you continue to be committed to Tawheed when you're not in a safe environment? There's no adhan. There's no culture to support you. Now is our responsibility to hold that together as a community. It's our responsibility to love each other as a community. It's our responsibility to teach the youth. It's our responsibility to solve our problems. We can't say, well, there's no hukuma, so we can't do it. And we also can't use the excuse that we had in the past. What was the excuse? يعني أرسل الأولاد إلى فلسطين ونذهب إلى البلد. All that, يعني هذا الكلام. Where are we going to go? Where are we going to go? So there's no escape except going into our hearts and working on ourselves. There's no escape except dealing with our community and having another vision. We'll close with saying this. Every day, we have to look at how it is that we think about ourselves. Don't say negative things about yourself. Every day, don't say nothing negative about yourself in your mind. Be clear about where you want to be in your relationship with Allah in your life. Don't say negative things about your family. Don't say negative things about the Muslims unless you're willing to correct the situation. يعني النقد لازم أن يتبع النقد الوفاء. وما هو هذا الوفاء؟ أن تقصد الإصلاح. أن تقصد الإصلاح. You have to have that commitment. If it is that you want to come and you want to bring a criticism about the Muslim community, then let's see what it is that you're willing to do to help it out, to build it up. The same thing with your family and your children. The same thing with your parents. The same thing between the different Arab groups and the different Indo-Pak groups. Because this is part of what's tearing us down, how it is that we think about each other. That's just equivalent to what we saw with the Samari. Why? Because it makes firqa. It makes division amongst the Muslims. We have a lot of problems, there's no doubt. But we also have the ability to solve those problems. We also have the ability to build the best community possible. We also have the ability for each one of you to be the best human being possible. But you have to believe. You have to believe. وهذا هو الإحسان. Every day المؤمن هو تاجر من نفسه. He's a businessman. He's a businesswoman with himself and herself every day. هل حياتي مطبقة مع قواعد القرآن أو مخالفة؟ وفي نهاية الأمر الميزان مع الله تبارك وتعالى. Is my life, is it moving with the principles of the Quran? How far? How close am I to? That implies having to understand the Quran. And at the end, the scales will tell us on the day of Yawm al-Qiyamah where it is that we last, where it is that we stand. أقول قولي هذا استغفر لي ولكم والحمد لله رب العالمين. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم وبارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. I want to say something really briefly. Something that happened that most of us are not aware of. يعني قدموا شوية يعني. Move up please so that your brothers can have some space. Recently in New Jersey, there was a law that was passed, and I know that we have to go. This is going to be one of the most trying laws that we have to deal with. So recently in New Jersey, recreational marijuana has been made legal. That you don't need a card or anything like that. So I was talking to one of the brothers that deals with counseling about this issue. This is going to change everything for us. But the problem is this. In New York City, it's still not legal. So those shabab that think that they're going to be smoking marijuana because now the laws in New Jersey changed and they cross the bridge or they go here and they go there, federally still illegal, and they get caught, don't think that you're not going to catch a case. It's a trick. The other issue is this, that in the child welfare system, they're still debating about how it is that they're going to deal with it. Child protective services. And when I worked in child protective services, they were willing to take the children from the home because of this, for the adults. And if people think they're going to sell it in the mahallat, we're not going to be able to function like that. And I'll say this, and we'll move on. Marijuana today is not marijuana yesterday. Marijuana today is genetically altered, and there's all different kinds, and it all has an impact on your psychology. All of it has an impact on your psychology. Some of it makes you think crazy. Some of it makes you laugh like you're a stupid person. And some of it makes you do other things. Once you put that into your body, or once you're in the environment that's like that, and you get impacted, Allahu A'lam, what happens after that? We keep saying that. I've seen it. I've lived it. We've lived it watching these streets, people smoking marijuana, and what happens at the end of the day. Don't say it's just okay, it's not this drug. No, at the end of the day, we've seen people. And they begin their path to addiction like that, and it becomes a serious problem. So the parents and the children and the community, we have to be serious. يعني وإياكم أصحاب المحلات أن تدخل في هذا. If it's medical marijuana, is another thing. That's with a doctor and license and all that. But the recreation, الآن دخلنا في شيء جديد يعني. So we ask Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala to protect us and to guide us and to aid us and to forgive us our sins and to accept us this Ramadan and to protect our children. And we ask Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala for this ummah. We ask Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala to put hope in the hearts of this ummah. We ask Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala to remove all worry and concern from this ummah. We ask Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala to accept those who have passed away as shuhada, especially those that have been killed in recent times. We ask Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala for Masjid al-Aqsa. And for every place in which the oppressed throughout the earth, whether Muslim or non-Muslims are, we ask Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala to liberate them. We ask Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala to not allow us to leave Ramadan without forgiving every one of our sins and allow us entry into Jannah. We ask for those that have passed away, Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala forgive them, aid them. We ask for those that are sick. We ask that you alleviate their sickness and for their families. And we ask for those that have lost their jobs, Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala increase their rizq. And we ask you, Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala, to allow us to die in the state of Islam. Aqimus salah.
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
الله أكبر الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا صراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواسوا بالحق وتواسوا بالصبر سمع الله لمن حمده الله Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد الله أكبر سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر الله الله السلام عليكم ورحمة الله السلام عليكم ورحمة الله Assalamu alaikum. Before everyone leaves, we have two things before us right now. One, downstairs, we need people to register to vote because we're trying to make the Eid a city holiday, state holiday, and we want to make it a federal holiday. But without us being organized, it's not going to happen. And in order for us to be able to do that here locally, we need to show our power. So downstairs at the office, we have forms to register to vote. Brother Hamadi is right there. And others. It's serious. If we want to do this for our children and for ourselves and to stop being in this condition, we have to be able to take the effort. The second thing is this. We're asking for people to support Manara. Manara right now has about 200 students that they're working with and trying to deal with the issue of the shubuhat and so on and so forth. And we need the economic support. We need people to support. Downstairs they have pledge forms. You can donate at the boxes, but we need to continue that work and that effort. There's no way that it can only happen solely from the minbar or solely from the house or solely from the school. We have to have a continued effort that we're trying to teach the youth the deen. And that can't happen if we don't have the people to do it. And the people to do it, they need to be paid. That's the reality. So we need you to support Al Manara University, which is part of this masjid, with whatever it is that you can, like I said. But don't forget to vote. Don't forget to register to vote so that we're able to move in that direction with some force, inshallah.